Have actually been back from Northern Ireland for more than 2 weeks.
Helping classic Fords go sideways since 2020.
Set of their shorter steering arms, less steering to make this turn.
Fitting the shorter steering arms, basically going to get 2 modifications by fitting the one part.
This is considerably heavier.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I've got this camber gauge. And what I hope you're able to see there is that there's essentially, I'm just going to lean against the plate and pull on the tape measures.
Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Marcus Hayes, and although it's only been a few days since the last video on this channel, we have actually been back from Northern Ireland for more than 2 weeks. Now, a lot has happened since then in terms of my non-car life, and those of you that watch the Marcus Hayes on track videos will know what I'm on about there. But in terms of the cars, all I've really done is take Esther, my ST170 powered Mk1 Escort, back to her garage, and I've brought Maude, my moredoor Mk2 Escort, back home here to her garage. And in this video, I'm going to be cracking on with fitting some parts to Maude. Some really cool parts from Donut Motorsport.
Donut Motorsport have been helping classic Fords go sideways since 2020. They're based in Yorkshire, over here in England, and as well as designing and producing parts themselves, they offer a cutting-edge 3D scanning service which helps other companies design and produce parts and products for the automotive industry. They can even bring this technology to their clients' premises to eliminate the hassle and costs associated with transporting large and delicate automotive components to external scanning facilities. I'll leave a link to Donut Motorsport's website in the description, and I'll also leave a link to their Facebook and Instagram. Definitely go and give them a follow on both of those platforms.
So what I've got here from Donut Motorsport are a set of their shorter steering arms.
And I know what you're thinking, didn't I already fit a pair of shorter steering arms to Maude not too long ago? Well, I did. And I had loads of people get in touch with me after I fitted those to ask where I could get them from. Now, those steering arms were actually given to me by a subscriber, and I wasn't able to find any for sale anywhere. But recently I was contacted by Donut Motorsport, who have developed these billet steering arms, which are specifically designed to increase the steering speed and angle of Mk1 and 2 Escorts and Capris. They've been CAD designed and machined from 7075 aluminium for increased strength while keeping the weight down. They actually only weigh 153 grams per side, and as you can see, they've been anodized matte black. Now, these are designed to fit the RS style legs and the Capri style legs, which have the bolt-on steering arms. I think the 3-litre Capri legs may have bolt-on steering arms, but I think the bolt pattern is different on those. But with the Capri 2.8 legs that I've got fitted to Maude, these are going to be perfect, but they will also fit RS2000 legs. And unlike the steering arms that I did fit to Maude recently, these ones are actually available for you guys to buy, either directly from Donut Motorsport or from my website at marcushayesuk.com.
So let me quickly try and explain how these are going to increase your steering lock. Essentially, the gap between the pivot point of your strut and this bit here, which is where the track rod end goes, is shorter. And what that means is the track rod end is closer to the pivot point. So if you imagine that the pivot point's here, if this track rod end was here instead of here, you would need more steering input to make this turn. Whereas if it's closer to the pivot point, you need less steering to make this turn any given amount. I hope that makes sense.
Running shorter steering arms also kind of gives the same characteristic as fitting a quick rack, because what you'll end up with is the same amount of turns from lock to lock, but that lock will be more than standard. But the amount of turns that go from standard lock to standard lock will be less turns than you would have had before fitting the shorter steering arms. So if you're planning to fit a quick rack, do consider fitting the shorter steering arms instead, because you're basically going to get 2 modifications by fitting
the one part. So I'm going to fit Maude's brand new short steering arms, which is a simple job, only 2 bolts each side. So let's get this thing jacked up and crack on with the job. And whilst I'm doing it, I'll be able to show you something about the design of these steering arms, which is an improvement over the ones that I've already got fitted to Maude. So these are the steering arms here. You can see they're bolted to the front suspension, and then the track rod end goes through here. I'm guessing the ones that I fitted before are steel because they're going rusty. So yeah, these new steering arms should be a lot lighter than the old ones. And it looks like they're going to offer more lock as well, because this is closer to this bolt hole than this is to this bolt hole. So less weight, more lock.
I removed the nut from the track rod end, and because I didn't have my ball joint splitter at my garage at home, I then threaded the nut back on so that it was flush with the thread, and then whacked it with my trusty club hammer to split the ball joint. I was then unable to get the nut back off because it was just spinning the ball joint itself, so I put a jack underneath it, which then enabled me to remove the nut.
To be honest, I was planning to fit a new steering rack and a new set of track rod ends to the car when fitting the Donut Motorsport steering arms, but you know, I've had them a while and I know that Donut Motorsport are eager to see what I think. Anyway, next up, I need to remove the steering arms from the front suspension leg itself. And it's just held on with these nuts and bolts. There's one there and one there. You can see that the head of the bolt is behind the disc. I don't really want to remove the hub and disc. That's one down, one to go. The problem with the other one is the brake caliper's in the way, so I can't get in there to hold the bolt still. So what I'm doing is I'm pushing the steering arm that way, which is kind of pulling that other bolt against here. And yeah, it looks like I might be able to undo the nut. Whee! So now, pull the old steering arm off, slide on the new one. All right, so I've got a little bit of a problem, and it looks like I'm gonna have to remove the caliper, the hub and the disc, because this won't slide on and clear the thread on this ball joint that's poking through here. So yeah, if those bolts weren't there, I'll be able to get this in position and then poke the bolts through, but I can't move the bolts out of the way until I move the disc out of the way. But to be honest, the proper way to do it is to remove the caliper and disc anyway. That's how I should have done it all along.
With the brake pipe released from the little tab on the front leg, I then removed the brake caliper and put this box under it so that it wasn't hanging down and putting strain on the brake pipe. Next up, I removed the dust cover from the centre of the hub, along with the split pin, the carcellated nut, the hub nut itself, and then I was able to slide the hub and disc off of the front leg. With the disc out of the way, the bolts were able to be removed. Then I was able to slide the new steering arm in, reinsert the bolts, and put the nuts back on. One thing I like about the Donut Motorsport arms is that you can clearly get to and remove the nut on the track control arm where it goes into the bottom of the strut, even with the arm fitted. With the old ones, I had to fit the track control arm without the arm fitted and then fit the arm afterwards. With the new steering arms fully fitted, it was just a case of putting everything back together. So back on went the hub and disc, then the bearing, then the washer and hub nut, then the carcellated nut and the split pin, and finally the dust cover. Next, I gave the brake disc a thorough clean with brake cleaner, and then refitted the brake caliper and reattached the brake pipe to the tab on the front leg. Next up, I inserted the track rod end into the new steering arm and tightened the nut up on that.
All right, so that's one side down and one to go. And while we've got one of each of the steering arms, I can give you a comparison. This is considerably heavier because this is made of steel. And if I line them up perfectly, you can see that this hole is slightly more that way. So these new steering arms are going to give slightly more lock, but they'll give a considerable amount more than the stock steering arms. Because when I fitted these ones, it was a massive difference. So yeah, now I'm going to bang out the other side and I'll crack on with that off camera. And just like that, we've got the passenger side steering arm fitted.
And now it's starting to rain. Right, so whenever you replace any steering components, you always need to do an alignment to make sure your tracking's right again. And when you're swapping for shorter steering arms, that's even more the case.
Now obviously Maude already had shorter steering arms and we've just fitted slightly shorter ones, but the tracking is now still really bad.
The car needed an alignment anyway. It was just roughly aligned at the last drift day, and the car needs a new steering rack. I think they're playing the steering. But yeah, when we set the tracking at the drift day, I roughly done it so that they were slightly towing out.
So, you know, your wheels are slightly this way both sides.
But now I can see by eye that they are actually now slightly towing in.
So the wheels are slightly like that. I don't know if you can see it really on the camera. But yeah, they're basically both slightly towing in.
But yeah, I'll just bung it on full lock and we can see how much lock we've now got.
So yeah, quite crazy lock.
It's a considerable amount more lock compared to standard. I'll just turn it the other way because the other side's near the wall.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Hello, into a new day, and I am going to be taking Maude for a drive to see how she feels with the new steering arms fitted. But first, I want to have a look at her alignment.
Now, it's worth noting straight away that she is not on perfectly flat ground.
So any alignment that I can do around here on my own is not going to be anywhere as accurate as getting a proper laser wheel alignment done, but it should make it a bit better than it is now. The first thing I've done is get the steering rack central. So basically, by turning the steering wheel from lock to lock, I've worked out where the center point is of the steering rack. And as you can see, it's with the steering wheel slightly left. So, you know, from this position, there's exactly the same amount of turns from here all the way to left lock as there is all the way from here to right lock. And once I've done the alignment, I can easily undo that nut, take the steering wheel off, put it back on straight and then do the nut back up. So, you know, right now the steering rack is in its central position. Now, I'm only going to be looking at the tracking or the tow, but I do briefly want to talk about camber because Maude has adjustable lower arms or track control arms fitted, which means I'm able to adjust the camber.
And the camber, of course, is how straight the wheel is vertically. So if you've got negative camber, it means the top of the wheel is in compared to the bottom. And if you've got positive camber, it means the top of the wheel is out compared to the bottom. And, you know, for drifting and stuff, it's good to have a little bit of negative camber, and Maude does have some negative camber.
And in fact, I've already measured it, and it seems like the passenger side has a bit more camber than the driver's side. But again, she's not on level ground, but let me show you how I measure camber.
So I've got this camber gauge, which is basically like a spirit level. You know, it's got a bubble there that moves depending on how level this gauge is. You can also adjust it.
And what that means is you could test one side and then adjust it so that the bubble's on 0 and then go around the other side and you can see exactly how much more or less camber one side's got than the other.
So if I use this bit of wood, and bearing in mind it's going to be bridging against the tyre, not the wheel, so, you know, it's not super accurate. But yeah, if we just put that there, so it's not touching the floor, you know, it's just measuring the wheel. And then I'll put my tool here, and as you can see, the bubble is actually off the scale. So what I'll do now is I'll turn this knob under here until the bubble is at 0, like that.
And then I'll take the gauge around to the other wheel and measure that.
And as you can see, the bubble is on 1.5 degrees, yeah, ish, in between the 1 and the 2.
So the passenger side has got roughly 1.5 degrees more camber than the driver's side, but as I say, she's not on level ground, so that's not going to be super accurate, and I'm not going to be messing around with the camber today. Anyway, on with the tracking, or the tow.
So to adjust the tracking, this is the steering rack, the tie rod of the steering rack, and this is where it connects to the track rod end, and that is obviously connected to the steering arms that are fitted earlier on in this video. Now, this locking nut here, I've already cracked off both sides, and basically by turning this track rod, it's going to extend or shorten the length of this, essentially, because the track rod end has got a thread in it. Now, I already know that both wheels are toeing in like this slightly, so I need to extend the track rods both sides. But now that I've got the steering rack central, I can basically figure out how much I need to extend each side. So I've got this long bit of wood. Now again, it's not going to be super accurate, but it just gives you an idea. So I've got this long bit of wood, and I'm going to basically bridge it across the rear wheel like that, and also against the front wheel. And what I hope you're able to see there is that there's a gap at the front of the front wheel and not at the back of the front wheel, which basically confirms that that front wheel is toeing in, because the wood is leaning on the back of the front wheel and not the front of the front wheel. And if I do the same test on the driver's side, I can see that there's still a gap at the front, so that confirms that the driver's side is also toeing in, but the gap is bigger than it was on the passenger side. So what that means is I need to adjust the driver's side more than I need to adjust the passenger side. Now, when you take your car for a proper alignment, they actually put like this gizmo on the steering wheel to lock it in position. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a rough note of, you know, how far to the left that steering wheel is at the moment, so that, you know, when I'm adjusting things, if that was to move, I know I can put it back to roughly there and measure again with the wood. But yeah, essentially I'm going to adjust the driver's side first, and then once the wood has confirmed that that's pretty much straight with the steering wheel being in the position it's in, then I'll know that I need to adjust the passenger side a little bit less than that, and yeah, hopefully we'll get to the point where, you know, the wheels are dead straight or slightly toeing out, because I like a little bit of toeing out. It helps with turning and stuff when you're drifting in Mexico. I need to adjust this so that it unscrews from the track rod end. Right, so that gap has now gone on the driver's side, so I'm going to do the same to the passenger side, and then I've got a tool that's going to help me get the alignment a little bit more accurate. All right, so the passenger side is now as straight as it can be using the wood method, and I've now hooked up my toe plates, which are basically these plates that lean against the wheel. They've got slots in for tape measures, and if you go around the other side, you'll see that the tape measures pass through the slots in this side, and literally all you do is you measure the gap between the front of the wheels and the back of the wheels, and then you're able to tell whether it's toeing in or toeing out. Now obviously this isn't super accurate, as I keep saying. You know, I've tried to brush away the stones just to make sure it's flat-ish, but yeah, it's never going to be as accurate as a proper laser alignment. But essentially I'm just going to lean against the plate and pull on the tape measures, and I can see that it is still toeing in slightly, as the front is measuring 159 centimetres and the back is measuring 159.5 centimetres. So I'm going to extend the track rods on both sides until I can get it so that the measurement at the front of the wheel is slightly more than the measurement at the back of the wheel. And there you go, we've got 159 centimetres at the front of the wheel now, and the back of the wheel is just under 158.5 centimetres. So that's probably a little bit too much toe out, but I'm going to leave it as it is. And all I need to do now is do these lock nuts back up and nip them up with a spanner, and then I'm going to take this old girl for a spin. Alright, so I've just thrown some fresh fuel in the tank, and now it's time to take this thing for a spin. I did adjust the steering wheel before I left the garage as well, so, you know, it's relatively straight. And yeah, the tracking feels quite good. You know, considering I'm pretty sure I've got some play in the steering rack, or there's certainly some play somewhere in the steering of this car. Yeah, it feels really good. So I thought I'd just talk you through what benefits you can expect when you fit shorter steering arms. Now, in terms of drifting, obviously it means that potentially you can drift at deeper angles. It also means that you're able to sort of save yourself easier. You know, when you sort of nearly spin out, you're able to save yourself from deeper angles, and that's something that I really found beneficial at my last drift day. You know, you can push the limits of your talent a bit more. You know, you can let it go more sideways and then still catch it before it spins out. So yeah, it's a really, really good modification
for drifting. Obviously, it is a bit of a drift mod, really. But, you know, even in terms of normal driving, as I explained earlier in the video, fitting shorter steering arms gives you the same benefits as a quick crack. So, you know, when you're normal driving, like I am now, it means that you can keep both hands on the steering wheel more often. You know, you don't need to be flapping around and crossing your arms as much, you know. So, you know, it is really cool for normal driving as well. Another thing, if you need to do a U-turn, then you can potentially do a U-turn on narrower roads where, you know, you might have had to do a 3-point turn, you know, if you had a standard set of steering arms. One thing worth noting is it will make your steering slightly stiffer, but that's the same thing as when you fit a quick crack as well. And it's the same as, you know, when you use a shorter bar to undo a nut. You know, you might have to sort of move your arm less, but it's stiffer. You know, you use a longer bar, it means you can undo nuts that are done up tighter, but, you know, you have to move your arm more to do that. And, you know, that's similar to how the steering arms work, with, you know, the track rod end being closer to the pivot point. So yeah, when you're doing donuts and stuff, it's so much easier to do bigger circles. You know, you've got more sort of range of what you want to do. So I actually went a bit too wide there and hit the curb. Also, didn't realise I was in second gear. Alright, so the roads are getting a bit busy now. It's almost rush hour, even on the private roads in Mexico. But I want to send a huge thanks out to Donut Motorsport for sending me these steering arms. I personally think they're a really, really decent product. They're very lightweight. They offer loads of steering lock. In fact, even more steering lock than the short steering arms that I already had fitted. Yeah, they're easy to fit. You know, it's just a couple of bolts once you've got the caliper and the disc and hub out the way. And yeah, I think it's an awesome modification for anyone to make to their classic Ford, as long as you're running the RS2000 or the Capri front legs. Now, if you could all do me a massive favour and go and follow Donut Motorsport on their Facebook and Instagram. I'll leave all the links to their social media in the description. And if you're in the market for some short steering arms yourself, you can either order these directly from Donut Motorsport, or you can order them from my website at marcushayesuk.com. A link to both will be in the description as well. So that's the end of this video. If you did think it was any good, please do give it a thumbs up and a share. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Do click subscribe if you're new to keep up to date with all future uploads. Feel free to follow me on Facebook, TikTok and Instagram. Check out my website for merchandise and car parts. Massive, massive thanks to my patrons for your ongoing support. I will, of course, leave all the links to everything in the description, as usual, along with my email address for anyone who wants to contact me. But other than that, until next time, thanks for watching.